Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Bella Naiman. I'm the co-founder of New York City Jewelry Week. And in case this is your first time joining us, New York City Jewelry Week is dedicated to promoting and celebrating the world of jewelry through educational and innovative focused programming, like the one you're going to experience today. Our ongoing web series, Jewelry Confidants, allows you to eavesdrop with permission on conversations between some of the most brilliant minds in the jewelry industry. So I'm really excited for today's conversation, which is called Wearing is Sharing with Jillian Moore and Saskia van Es. We will have another Jewelry Confidants taking place later this month on April 22nd. So I hope you, if you like what you see here today, I hope you will sign on for future conversations. But today is all about Jillian and Saskia. And so I'd love to read you Jillian's bio and introduce her first. Jillian Moore is a full-time artist and sometime writer based in Iowa City, Iowa, working primarily in the field of contemporary jewelry and small sculpture. Moore received a BFA in Metalsmithing and Jewelry Making from Western Illinois University in 2004 and an MFA in Jewelry and Metal Arts from the University of Iowa in 2008. Moore's work has been exhibited in the US as well as abroad, and most recently at Gallery 2052 in Chicago, Illinois, as part of Jewelry Edition version 5, at Alliages in Lille, France, and Friends of Carlotta in Zürich, Switzerland. Moore's work is inspired by forms in the natural world, bent by a bonkers sense of humor, and amplified by an interest in the fantastical and the anarchic. Operating with a background in metalsmithing and a foreground in experimental resins and other new materials, Moore's work is executed with the obsessive, monomaniacal approach of a craft discipline training tempered with a casual disregard for material or disciplinary hierarchies. You can see Moore's latest wearable work at the Gilded Pear Gallery in Cedar Rapids. In the exhibition, Polyphenous 21, Mimetic Lives 2. This project is a co-exhibition with the artist Satomi Kawai and marks the artist's 15th anniversary of exhibiting their work together. I'm also thrilled to introduce to you Saskia, who's Jillian's confidant. Saskia van Es is an art historian. She writes about contemporary jewelry. Her fascinations are the meanings people attach to jewelry and the histories behind jewelry materials. At the moment, she's exploring the environmental impact of gold, stones, pearls, and man-made materials. She was a board member of the Françoise van den Bosch Foundation. Ladies, thank you both so much for being here. I'm so excited to have this conversation. And before I hand it over to you both and disappear, I just wanted to start off in the same way that we always do. How did you two meet? Tell us.
I think we met at Sieraad's art fair for sure.
Yes, but really... I've been trying to remember which year.
Several years we spoke there, and I was drawn to your table of goodies, but also to you as a person, and I really, I looked for you for a couple of years and chat with you, and one year, remember you were caught in this storm, Sandy, and you didn't arrive until the last minute, and I don't know if it was the appropriate time of day, but you only wanted to have caffeine and coffee and to keep your eyes open and organize your stand in 1 minute. Yeah.
I remember meeting you the next year because that year I have very little memory of that first day. The first year that I did Sieraad was in 2012, and Hurricane Sandy canceled all flights off of the East Coast, and I was trapped in New York. And by the time I landed, it was the morning the fair had to open, and I think by the end of that day I had been awake nearly 40 hours, and so. Yeah. I genuinely have no memory of it. I remember having a really great conversation with you the next year.
Yeah. Well, you didn't say anything that I would remember as out of place, but I did think, wow, she's really good with words, and what a special lady.
I saw a video interview that I had no memory of doing online later, and I had to watch it and kind of like, I hope this went good.
That's dangerous. And Jillian, we also had, I think sadly it was the last time we spoke in person because of all the developments, but we went to the opening of an exhibition in a museum in the Netherlands called Coda, and it was about drag. So not only about jewelry, but about all the accessories that are larger in scale and larger than life, and really appropriate, I feel.
Yeah. I think I always look forward to actually getting to talk to you at events over there. So that was kind of why I thought this would be a fun pairing. It seems like every time we bump into each other, we immediately like dive into something maybe more intense than a casual conversation.
But I have to say that the profoundness has come in steps, because, for example, first, this is my first, well, not that I have a large collection of you, unfortunately, but this, I think, was the first pair of earrings that I just bought because of the visual or the aesthetic appeal. And I had, at that time, no idea of all the things all the layers that are also in your work and your ideas behind it. So that was really a next step or a new discovery over the years. And I'm glad I know now. It's
I love that. I mean, I want my work. I think that, as we've discussed, it's a type of subversiveness to sort of seduce with a certain look, and then maybe pull people into something that isn't normally in their comfort zone. It can be a really great way to start deeper conversations.
But it's not required. I mean, if anyone would just love it for the love at first sight and that's it, and it's okay for you.
Oh, absolutely. And I often really enjoy the interpretations people bring to the work that I did not put together. I've had some really funny interactions with people who do not want to connect with like the abstract part of it or any of those references, and come up with a very literal interpretation that is very confusing to me.
So they would, for example, say, I love the taste of strawberries and this is a strawberry, or
that one is less worrisome. I had a woman, she kept holding a brooch upside down and she was convinced that the shape of it was a cat. But she didn't call it a cat, and I'm not sure why. She was a much older woman and she kept calling it the blue pussy, and it was very difficult for me to go, it's whatever you want it to be.
But you're not afraid of putting these bodily reference in there, or
and that's why it was even funnier, because she did not mean it in the vulgar sense at all, but everybody else around knew that those references were in my work, and it was like completely not what she was getting, except that then with this outdated term, she's completely accidentally doubling back into it. So I was biting a hole in my lip, trying to, you can have it and you can call it whatever you want.
Which is true. As soon as you hand it over to a buyer, a wearer, then it's not yours anymore to interpret.
But it means that especially when I've done fairs in America, the audience here in particular for jewelry really struggles with abstraction that has organic references. And I would consistently have people say, what is this supposed to be? Which is such a loaded question, because it implies that I've failed in presenting an intentional something, and some people, when you say, it's not supposed to be referencing anything, it is many things and it's open-ended, people sometimes will frown or scowl at that because they have such a knee-jerk, like, I don't like that.
So would you say people have a certain need for clarity, that they want to know what's the thing at hand, and they don't want to have open ends? Or some people, I mean,
some people, I think the audience for like craft discipline work in America in particular is a little more conservative, or a little bit skewing that direction, at least at some of the major events that I've attended. And they are people who have preferred the craft world for that reason, that maybe the line that they've drawn between where fine art exists and craft exists is that they're comfortable in that space because it's going to make sense to them. And so when I would present work that didn't make sense, it was sort of this friction that was not what they were coming for. And it was why I enjoyed Sirad in a Dutch audience, because it seems like a culture that is kind of up for that type of friction. And again, that's a generalization, but like, I would say the everyday people who were attending that fair, I was having casual conversations about, people would say, what are your thoughts on biological abstraction? Like, they got that. And the question was about what I was working with. Whereas, I was coming out of conversations like, what is this supposed to be? So that shift was really what kept me returning, because it was more comfortable types of conversations, or more interesting,
Now I'm really proud, because I was born in Amsterdam, and you call these people open-minded, but I'm not sure everyone is though. But Jillian, now I have a question that I always wanted to...
survey, a narrow survey.
It's not scientifically sound, but the question is about, I always wanted to know you have a strong sense of language and words and weird words, but with these titles you give your work, do you help those people who need a bit more literal clarity, or do you send them into the woods even more? What is your idea?
I think it depends on the moment, and it depends on my mood. I would say sometimes I tend to be a little more ornery if I think that somebody is maybe operating in bad faith anyway. But I think for some people they really add a lot, especially like doctors, when they visit my shows. I have a lot of fun with the titles. All of my titles, I'm sort of following my own bastardized rules from scientific naming, and so there's evocative stuff in them, and sometimes they're almost more like common names and sort of joking in a specific direction that way. And other times I'm doing etymological research and thinking about the roots of words, and sort of I think that there are things that we kind of pick up on, and maybe we don't explicitly know, but we get a feeling, because when you get into Latinate terms especially, they show up in so many different languages in so many different ways. And then English is current English is an amalgamation of so many languages that you can borrow from all these different early
influences,
proto languages.
Oh, I completely agree. There's no starting point or like a clean English or something that is, and I think the reference to that whole system of Carl Linnaeus giving names to the natural world and dominating in that way, it's not only fun and etymology, it's also problematic to have put the natural world in boxes and
and so the naming is kind of playing off of that too. Like I'm giving myself the sort of authority that is a problematic type of authority in Western culture. And so I think that there's something funny in playing with that and subverting it a little bit. I have a lot of tension in my own fascination with science and understanding that the history of it is bound up in all the other histories of our current civilization that we're sort of reckoning with. And
absolutely.
I think, I try and find ways to like take pleasure in the parts of it I enjoy and maybe poke fun at the parts of it that I think need to be reconsidered.
But me, with my material lens at the moment, I have to ask you, have you never considered of using the materials from the natural world, or have you ever done that? Or
Early on, I did have more natural materials inside of the pieces, but I would say what I found is that like a true found natural form is almost something that I think is so good on its own.
Yeah.
That like I found myself sort of like never really winning in the course of making the piece. And also at a certain point, there was a shift in what I was including in the pieces and thinking like, you know, an organic item is going to break down on its own and it's sort of not a problem in the environment. But each of my pieces has sort of become a little landfill where I'm mixing some new purchased materials, but a lot of found thrifted material, especially single-use plastics and secondhand art supplies. And it's almost like I don't want to occupy a volume with something that is not a problem when I could occupy it with something that otherwise would be a problem.
Yeah, but it's sometimes a bit confusing for me that because you buy this is, I think, maybe not known to everyone, but you buy your supplies preferably in secondhand stores, thrift stores, and
I try and get a lot of things from secondhand stores. I mean, there are some pieces that are mostly new materials, and then it is about managing waste. But especially in the last 5 years, I've really been more conscious about wanting to try and source things that would otherwise be, you know, would be trash to people. The foam that I carve for my bigger pieces is a building material that is really easy to find scraps of after people finish building projects. And like there are so many like fake flower and botanical elements that I see in
there
thrift stores.
There are a lot of they're very fascinating.
Yeah, and they're interesting forms, and I kind of like the cartooniness of them more than a natural flower. I mean, I like the sort of like hyper realism of some of those things. And I think it's harder to get to a melding of different references if there is like an actual leaf or an actual flower. It has such a strong presence, but disassembling those secondhand flowers and turning them into some kind of, you know, Frankenstein thing is sort of, to my mind, more effective at getting at what I want.
And what do you want? What is it?
I really want to create things that feel as familiar as they are unfamiliar. You know, I want there to be references there that you can connect to, and then other things that are out of place, whether it's, you know, a crossing of scale or a crossing of like an organism and an organ and maybe something geological or botanical. I think that I find it to be a very efficient way at subverting categorization and subverting like very binary interpretations, to mix a bunch of things together and then try and nip out any easy answer. And to me, the most satisfying objects end up existing in sort of a complicated place of being really attractive and repellent, because I think that it gets at a very human problem that we have in general, which is, you know, we want the big we. Culturally, it seems like there's a lot of tension around people wanting the familiar and not liking the unfamiliar or unknown. And the way that idea of other is sort of misused, especially right now in America. I mean, the last 4 years under Trump were so terrible. I found myself really thinking more consciously about what it means to demonize something that makes us feel surprised. And like the root of that question of what is this supposed to be is very much, to my mind, congruous to people who say, you know, you aren't supposed to be that way.
So the maybe not so comfortable side of your jewelry mirrors that some groups are kept in the margins. Would you say that your jewelry will be appreciated differently by different groups, or do you hope for that maybe?
Yes, and it creates some interesting sort of sociological interactions because of it.
Have you experienced that already? Have people given you feedback for that aspect?
I find.
Oh, cool.
And I find that people who identify as queer in the same way that I do see a lot of the sort of strange things in what I think of as expressions of solidarity and like revelry, and people who don't like those things respond negatively or condemn it, or especially with like older white men sort of pick up on what they see as sexual references, and then it becomes this extrapolation of the same problem of, you wouldn't dress that way if you didn't want my attention. So it turns into, I see this in your work, you must want me to make this comment about it, and you and your body and who you must be. And I've had some pretty negative interactions as well. At the last fair that I did, I actually had a man make a joke about the sort of price tags on my work, and implying that there was a price tag on me as well.
No kidding. Oh, that's horrible.
We talked about this last time, but I realize it's happened multiple times. There is this odd overlap between with men of a certain age that is like, if you want to be seen and you want attention and you are engaging in this sort of mercantile environment of a fair, that maybe I can make jokes about you being some type of sex worker. And like, on the one hand, I think making sex workers the butt of a joke is horrendous. And then on the other hand, this projection that all women who want my attention and who are trying to make a living can be conflated with sex workers. Like everything about it, it's like, I don't know how to even unpack this for you, buddy. You just need to get out of my booth.
Yeah, every aspect of that was so painful, and poor guy with only one brain cell.
Yeah, I honestly, the only thing I have working to my advantage is that I am I'm physically intimidating in a small space. So it becomes something where at least I don't have to deal with the same type of physical threat that I think women and femmes who are more petite, do, and maybe get conditioned to like, okay, go along to get along because of danger. If I'm in a public space, and especially it's like a man old enough to be my father or grandfather, occasionally I will lean in, and just remind him, like, I'm happy to see you out and capable of seeing you out.
Well done, Jillian. This brings me to something else. It has to do with taking up space, apparently, or taking up physical space in society.
Yeah.
So we should not go around this, but go straight forward, fast forward, and go out there and wear even more and do even more of the colorful big thing in public.
I know it can be intimidating. I mean, there are a lot of conversations, like the heart of our title. The conflict for a lot of contemporary jewelry fans is that friction of being in public and calling attention to yourself, like your essay referencing Simone Weil and attention. Who do we want to give attention to? There is a risk in society of drawing the attention that you don't want, but giving into that to for me personally, there was a very conscious choice in my life when I was 14 or 15 that I was tired of being bullied. And one day for school, I put on exactly what I wanted to wear rather than what I thought I needed to wear to be invisible. And it was like, I'm going to get shit no matter what I look like. At least I can dress for myself. And over the course of my life, realized like I'm also doing that for the other, weird people and queer people who want to look the way they want to look. And that means that it is a big ask for some people. I mean, I understand why certain people would say, well, I don't want to have that interaction, because you have to put yourself in a physical space where maybe, you know, you don't feel safe or you don't feel comfortable. But, you know, in like a larger sense, there are people who can choose to blend in more. And there are people who it's just not possible. You know, it's not who they are. When we get into like topics of gender specifically, when it's not about contemporary jewelry, but it's about who you are at a fundamental level, you know, like trans feminine people and trans women end up getting put in a trap of, if you look a certain way, you know, you won't have this social friction. And if you don't, you'll be in danger. And I think a lot about the sort of solidarity of saying, I want to take up space too. And I want to take up space for other people and maybe make room for that. So being a sort of more masculine presenting cis woman who is big and loud and unapologetic about those things and colorful, I think that it can be an act of solidarity to anybody who wants to be different and go against that grain. And I encourage people who maybe feel that impulse to do it, and just do it in a group, and you know, always have somebody there who can like clobber the creepy guy for
Yeah, exactly. But if your work was also intended to be a comfort to those people who encounter these things on a daily basis, would you not want to be more outspoken about it? I mean, it is very subtle. I mean, we talk about it now, but it is not on the label with your jewelry. Oh no, that's where the price for the guy is who wants to hire you. But have you ever thought of maybe developing, being more activist in the message, or is it sort of take it or leave it for the one who understands it?
I think it depends on the showing. Like at when I have talks, I try and be more overt about it, and it's present in my artist statement. I think that I think that there's something about the subversiveness of winning people over that I do like. I guess when I think of ways to like make the work somehow more explicit on certain topics, I think that it can be a little hacky to be too literal about those types of things. And also I sort of, there's like an arm wrestling that I like having with following that line. Like I really like when a piece that to my eye is very strange and sexual and confusing in, you know, in like a very open way, and then it appeals to someone who maybe doesn't see that in it, but on like a very visceral level they find it pleasing, you know, they want to see that. I think that is sort of getting into a space of offering solidarity to some people and maybe seducing others. Do you know there's a quote from the activist Tony Cade Bambara that is, the job of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible.
No, nice quote. No.
And I think of that a lot. I went through like a lot of friction after Trump was elected. I really did have a little crisis of like, you know, my work is not doing these things that I think are important, or like the part of me that is engaging in social justice work, like that's not present in my work. And how do I make it more overt? But then on reflecting, it was like, well, to the people who are marginalized and maybe feel unsafe because of their sexuality or their gender identity or just the way that they look in public, my work made them happy and feel good. And there's value in that. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a broadside that takes aim explicitly at a bigot. It can also be something that offers pleasure and comfort to people who have maybe been pushed out. So an organizer that I knew recommended an author, Adrienne Murray Brown, who wrote a book called Pleasure Activism. And that connected some things for me in terms of like that type of work fit into a sort of asceticism or like joylessness in my mind. I think that there's this idea that, you know, if you're doing social justice work, that you're supposed to be very serious all the time, and it's, you know, there's something like hard about it, and that's not going to win anybody over. And the sort of arc of her book, or this bigger ethos of pleasure activism, is like it should be celebratory and revelatory, and people should feel like there's a really cool party and everyone is invited, and even you are invited. But we're going to make sure, we're going to make sure that all these people feel safe and welcome, and you can, you know, leave Team Bigot and join this really cool fun party, or sorry, you're not invited. And there's something about that kind of connects, or has it made the last few years survivable to me.
Yeah, and I would also say that is true for every piece of art, that it should not be abused by some ideology, or sometimes art is picked up by activist groups, and then it loses its sense of humor and the double layer where we can all feel comfortable to enter in different
and I think humor is so disarming that, you know, you can really Trojan horse a lot of stuff with a little bit of humor. And I think that my hope is to like win over more people. And Esther, Adrienne Murray Brown, I can email you. She's got a few really great books that are kind of changing how I think about you know, who I am in the world even.
But Jillian, if you but you do go out, like you said in your wonderful quote, on the bus, in public, but I also saw that you did some more work for objects on the wall. So what would you say will have the bigger attention and the bigger?
It's been a really strange year, because I did a bunch of big objects, and for years I said that I wanted to, you know, make room in my practice to get to doing some art objects, but I kept having jewelry events. And I mean, my jewelry is not small. These are smaller, but I have very large.
Shall I show the brooch? That is an oldie of yours.
They're not small, but they're not large sculptures.
But just to sidetrack again, zigzag, these wonderful shapes with my own boobies that I'm sometimes, when I'm not so self-assured, I think is a word, and I make them look very botanical, and sometimes I make them really like the ripe lady I am at the moment. And there is a certain notion of biology here, I would say, not only fruit but also
and it is to me. It's funny that just that flip. I mean, I made it so that you could wear it either way, but
that's right. That has there is all kind of even neutral is possible.
Neutral, but I think it's funny that it's just as simple as that turning, that it goes from feeling more plant-like to a little X-rated.
But sorry to sidetrack, but we were talking about if you would wear this in public, and I have to say that I'm not your bravest friend, because I've only worn this in the inner circle, you know, with other jewelry people who were wearing even bigger strange things and in different places. So I'll have to do the experiment and put my what is it, the action and the CB after A, and to go wear this and then, like you say, see if I can share. See what happens.
I think the objective is sort of like try to focus on the people who smile and enjoy it, and less so on the people who like smile in a creepy way. I think that that's like the value of it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But people will not take offense too much. I mean, it's really pleasant, and it is, like you say, it draws you in at first because it's such a pleasant. It's not aggressive or disturbing.
Yeah, I think they're whenever I have a table of a bunch of work laid out, I mean, people's eyes kind of give away that immediate, honest, like joy, you know, just immediate visceral joy, and that's so worth it. What's sad is the people who go from that to anger, that their response to that particular type of feeling in themselves is, this is bad.
Yeah.
I think that like, well, that says more about you than it does about me or my work.
It's so worthwhile for anyone to explore that feeling, that where is the anger, or what are you afraid of, or
yeah,
you don't have to like it, of course. I mean, you don't have to search your soul until you like it, but
no, but if you have like, people either immediately love or immediately hate my work.
Yeah.
I have never had somebody go like, I don't know. It's a really, you know, knee-jerk response for or against every time. Doubling back to the wall things, and I mean it relates.
Just to interrupt you, I do like them, and I also have the feeling, I don't know where your work is heading, your development, but these wall things are really powerful. So, but they're not wearable. There's no pin on the back side, is there? Or
no, they're too big. I'm enjoying making them too big for that. Yeah, it's been weird. I was able to do them because the same gallery that I'm showing in now, Gilded Pear Gallery, specifically said, you know, I know you've wanted to try these sculptural pieces. They are trying to build a new jewelry audience, and so they thought maybe we can have this crossover and get some of our sort of normal fine art collectors noticing the jewelry by way of these pieces too. And it was really fun over the summer of, like, you know, being stuck here and feeling like everything was kind of off the rails, and I just got to shut down the jewelry part of my space because I'm limited here in the size of my studio, and just do these big pieces. And I started some of them actually at the Smitten Forum, which is normally a jewelry retreat. And I went to it and said, do you mind if I don't make any jewelry at all? But it was very fun because then I got to go even bigger, you know, and do bigger things. And the result is it sort of put me in this odd place of thinking about what pieces I want to make and how to have both, because I like the freedom as a maker to do bigger shapes and like kind of experiment with there's fewer restrictions, you know, I can just do more on a bigger piece, but I lose that magic that I referenced about sort of what jewelry can do. Like if you buy a fine art
on the
piece,
body, worn on the body. Yeah.
Like a fine art piece lives in your home and it's only for you and the people who you know in your immediate circle. But a jewelry piece you take out and you share with everybody. And I've said that's jewelry's superpower, and I don't want to give that up either. So I'm currently building a new studio at every house that will be bigger, and I can do both, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I saw Bella said we have some questions, maybe.
Oh, should we ask Bella to see if there's anything we need to do now?
I think
good. You are good. Just keep on chatting.
Okay.
I has any, but we're perfect on time. So.
Okay. I wasn't sure, it blasted past and I just saw your name and I wanted to make sure.
No, you guys you're perfect. This is very inspiring. So keep talking.
We will keep chatting.
But so that idea is what I connected to in your essay about attention, and why I thought this would be interesting, because that quote of mine that got peeled out of the jewelry edition interview has sort of, I guess, resonated with people in a really good way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so if you would be on the bus as just a lay person and you would see something, then what is the next step, or how can it become available in that person's life? Or is it just a brief encounter, which is a good start? I mean, that would be 100% better than nothing.
Sometimes people ask to buy work then and there. You know, somebody says, what is that? And then they want to know.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
And so I have had pieces that found a home that way. But I think like the bigger picture of what art can do in people's lives, that idea of, you know, flipping somebody's perspective and changing that, showing up with an art object that does something like that is really valuable. I was, you know, we've talked about riding the bus and encountering people. I was on the bus wearing work, and a kid who was maybe 14 or 15 specifically sat by me, and I could feel this younger person kind of checking me out, and tapped me to take my headphones off and just said, "What do you do?"
Oh.
And I said, I'm an artist. And they said, "And you get to be like this." I go, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." They're like, "How do I do it?"
Oh.
You know?
So this is about people being able to be what they are. And
yeah,
this young kid wanted to know the secret door.
Yeah, and it was very clearly coming from a place of like, they said, "I can't look the way I want to look. And you know, I'm afraid to do it," and people say I can't. And it's like, this is the job where you can do whatever you want and you can look how you want. And it's actually my job in society to show that and model that, and maybe be the weird, crazy lady on the bus who expands your idea of what you can be or do. That like, that is supposed to be my function. And so I talked about making work and what that is like for this person. And it was really great. And the jewelry is kind of a part of what started that.
That's a really touching story. And hopefully we'll see that person in a couple of years at Zürich or at wherever.
Yeah.
Or with other art.
Yeah. I saw that somebody asked about other pieces, and I do have more pieces that I can.
Oh, show me.
Yeah. This actually, I have this piece ready because my friend Sam just bought it on my layaway plan, and it's a brooch.
What is it, your layaway plan?
Another way that I think makes jewelry like this accessible is I started having people pay in installments, because I couldn't afford to buy a big piece like this. And so I just have people pay in whatever payment quantity they can if I know them and we have that connection. And so this is over foam, and you can see it's super lightweight. It would float in water. If I put it in water, it would float away. Here's sort of a medium-sized pendant.
Oh, that's funny. So is it made? It's not hollow. There's foam in there or some object, right?
Yeah,
lightweight object. Hopefully
they have carved insulation foam. This one has a very long cord.
Oh.
And then the aqua resin surface, like the class that you took, this is an aqua resin piece. Oh.
And what are these yellow thingies around their beads?
They are, I knotted these. They are the rubber cord from the earplugs that my partner had to wear every day at work, and they made them throw away their earplugs. And so he kept collecting them because I said, it's so terrible that you have to throw those in the trash. And I figured out if I knot them, they sort of look like when certain plants produce pollen in really high numbers, they sort of have these little like pushing out lines of pollen. And I thought, it's just a bunch of plastic that's going to be thrown away. So I knotted them and sewed them on the cord.
I thought I knew that a lot of materials can be a jewelry material, but this is another one.
Anything can be jewelry.
Oh no, Jillian, I really would have liked to see you here in Amsterdam, or I would love to come to Iowa, and I'm sure that Esther wants it to see you and these things and touch it, because it's.
I know that is the main thing that I really miss right now. It's one thing to see pictures, but it's another thing to handle the pieces. And my work is very visually arresting, but I do also make them to be worn and to be tactile. And like the bigger ones are over foam, so they're really light, so you could wear it on the bus comfortably.
Yeah.
And I think the next step of something being great is, from 20 feet away, people are dazzled, and then as they get closer, they think it gets better and it pulls them in more, and then you have, I'll see, a box of rings here. Even when you're super close, it's still juicy and appealing. And I want that to be, zoom all the way in and want to handle it. Or people often threaten to put them in their mouths.
In their what? In their sorry?
In their mouth. They'll say I want to lick them.
Yeah, lollipop or pacifier. Or, yeah. It's an oral thing too, I would say. They
yeah.
A bit
There's
wet.
a lot of
you can't blame them for doing it.
Yeah, people are wanting, they want to fully consume it. and that's great. I mean, I think to make up a thing that is sort of strange looking and have strangers say, I want it so bad, I want to eat it. That is really fun.
I have a question. Some of the questions we're getting are about the materials that you use to make your pieces. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I work a lot with a clear resin on the surfaces of the pieces when they have that gloss. It's actually built up from 6 to 12 layerings, and I often will paint or add other things in between. But I also build up pieces with something called aqua resin, which counterintuitively is opaque and is not a clear resin at all. And that's what's over the foam to make it really strong. And I use all different kinds of paint. I find a lot of plastic components like game pieces, artificial flowers. There are these funny plastic crystals that they used to sell in the 70s and 80s to make stained glass in your oven, which you should not melt plastic in your oven. And I am adding those into the resins. I like polymer clay, I like wood. I still do soldering, the rings have a core of brass. I mean, I am a glutton for materials. Mm-hmm. The downside is that then each piece, if I was really explaining it, is a paragraph of all the little things that I played with in it.
Yeah. So Bella, I see a question that I think is for Jillian, but I can be the image. Yeah. How this attaches to your clothing is with these little, there is a name for them, but I don't know them, but it's 3 pins that are actually embedded. So in the process, I think you already put the fixture in there, the closure, the whatever the word is, and then kept on layering. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. So there's metal hardware that's actually attached in, and when I've flown with pieces, the x-rays are very funny because you can see all these little brass pieces inside that are holding things. So they sort of look like, organs that have had reconstructive surgery. So you see all these soft outlines and then hard shapes moving through them like hip replacements.
I'm sure that you get then a lot of questions from TSA and airport security.
The best one was the first time I flew with a lot of big pieces. I was waiting to see what the woman would say. And as it went through, I saw her look at it and look at my case and then look at me. And then she just said, Christmas ornaments, right? And then I thought, like, the way that she said it was so accusatory. And I thought, I think when people travel with a bunch of sex toys, they call them Christmas ornaments.
Yeah.
I think because of the scale of the particular piece at the time, that is my understanding.
Here's your sex toy.
Yeah. And I've also, I also had a large necklace once, and I'm taking everything off and trying to get ready to go through the scanner, and I hadn't gotten to the necklace yet, and she just goes, "Ma'am, take that thing off." It was like, not reading it as jewelry or anything. It was just like, whatever that is, it's a problem, and you got to get it out of here. But I have a lot of fun interactions with TSA because of it. I've asked repeatedly to let me take a picture of the X-ray of my work, and they're like, "No, you can't come back here." Someday I'm going to sweet talk one of them.
So we have a couple of minutes left. So I do want to encourage, if you have any questions, please do, get them in either through the Q&A or the chat. We're monitoring both. But I also have a question based on something that someone put in the chat earlier. And that is, do you find that collectors of your work sort of start small and then work up to a larger piece? Like almost like you need that confidence boost, or like you need time to feel comfortable.
Yes, almost everybody starts with something small. Mm-hmm. and they're apologetic about it, as though I'm like, you better buy a big one. But I think that I make the smaller ones for that reason. I actually got into a little bit of an argument with a gallery owner who will not be named, but he told me that my small pieces ruin my big pieces for him. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, they're more affordable for people, and also they're for entry-level collecting. I said, I think of the small pieces because they pack so much in a small space. They make somebody feel like they could take a little bit of a risk and go out on a limb, and then something shifts, and they will buy bigger pieces, maybe not even from me, but I am indoctrinating new collectors with the weirder small pieces. And then maybe they feel eventually like they want a bigger one, and they take that jump. I can't think of very many people who've just gone straight for a big one.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Saskia, do you have Jillian, any sort of closing, thoughts or remarks before we end this really lovely conversation, which I wish didn't have to end, but like all good things sort of must come to an end.
I would tell anybody who hasn't yet to check out Saskia's essays on jewelry materials that she's been doing for Klimto 2. I think of her writing right now as like just some of the most lyrical and approachable in our field. Like, I think it's hard to really dig into deep ideas and also make it pleasurable to read, and that's why I love what Saskia is doing.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do like the writing, but I also try to do some things at home in my makeshift studio, and I was really understanding your work a lot better when I took part in your workshop. But I have to be honest, it was also out of sheer curiosity. How do you make these things? And then, of course, we were across the ocean, but it really felt like the touching and the working together in that workshop was really nice. And so I was just going to say that even as not as an artist, but as a very much of an amateur, I really enjoyed that, to understand more of what you do to make the magic work.
That's great. I when I started doing the Zoom workshops with Picosin, it didn't occur to me that it could just be interesting from that standpoint. But I think that it sort of gives people who are curious permission to show up, where in like a workshop space, they might feel like, oh, I shouldn't, take up a table. But I think it's interesting talking about how things are made. And I think it does help people understand, because I'm throwing so many things in every piece. And so I'm glad that you were able to get that out of it. I think that
so I will not be one of your customers at fairs who will ask the question anymore, is this glass? Because I now know.
Yeah, I've joked, the only Dutch I've really consistently learned is nee, kunstharz. And I don't think I'm delivering it very well right now, but at least there, people understand what resin is, and it, once I say it's resin, I don't have to explain what resin is.
Yeah, exactly.
So last question, but a very important one. Are there any more workshops coming up?
I am currently setting up dates with Picosin for end of summer or early fall. So if you follow the Picosin Art Center, I'm going to do another one on clear resin and another one on aqua resin. But I need to get myself settled in the new space first.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. Jillian, good luck setting up the new space. I hope you share, photos if you're comfortable, or give us a tour. I'm sure everybody wants to see and what it's going to look like. Saskia, thank you so much. We are thrilled to have you both here today for this Jewelry Confidants. Our next conversation will take place on Thursday, April 22nd, where we will have Diane Batista, a jewelry historian and scholar, in conversation with Otto Jacob, a jeweler, also actually based in Germany. So some great international conversations taking place. And we've sent out a mailer about that. But if you don't receive our mailer, please do sign up on our website, follow us on Instagram. Thank you all so much for being here. Please check out Jillian's exhibition at the Gilded Pear. They have a wonderful Instagram page. Check out Jillian's Instagram page and Saskia, and the essays on Klimt O2. So thank you all so much, and have a really wonderful day, everyone.